My true story, from Louisiana debt. They called me dead weight at the family dinner table. I just sipped my tea, then sold the table, the chairs, and the house that held them. Mama, you walk around this house like you still own it, Megan hissed under her breath, leaning across the kitchen counter, her voice sugar-coated just enough for the guests not to hear. Do you have any idea how many months of mortgage payments we've had to float because of you? I didn't answer. I just held my cup of tea, steam rising between us like a line I no longer had the energy to cross. Honestly, she said, her voice dropping to a whisper so cold it cut through the heat of the summer evening, you only keep living because you have nothing better to do than watch us. You think we need you? I took a small sip. It tasted faintly of chamomile and something older, something bitter. In the dining room, laughter rose, clinks of forks against fine china, wine glasses full, chairs polished to gleam beneath the chandelier I had once picked out with my late husband. Tonight, they had invited half the bank staff, some for networking, others to impress, and I was seated at the children's table. Not even that, really. They had dragged in a plastic patio chair and set it beside a sideboard in the far corner of the room. My plate was paper, my cup was plastic. The fork was too flimsy to cut into the dry roast chicken I'd been served. No cloth napkin, just a torn square of paper towel. They said it was easier that way, less to clean up. I watched Megan raise her glass in the center of the main table. She looked radiant in the glow of her ambition, sleeveless silk dress, diamond studs in her ears, and a smile sharp enough to carve through stone. Before we eat dessert, she announced, I just want to thank everyone for joining us tonight. It's been a huge year, and we're preparing for another big transition. She paused for dramatic effect. Soon, this beautiful home will officially be part of our new investment trust. We're planning renovations, a total refresh. Applause, clinks, nods of approval. No one looked at me. I stared down at the cracks in the table they had pushed me beside. It was the old oak buffet I had inherited from my own mother, scratched, sturdy, heavy with stories. I remembered polishing it every Christmas. Now it held their wine glasses. Dessert was served without ceremony. I was handed a slice of cake on a napkin. No plate, no fork. I'll be out on the porch, I said quietly, though no one asked. I walked slowly, letting the screen door click shut behind me. The Louisiana night air was thick with heat, crickets singing in the grass. I stood by the rail, the same spot Tom used to lean on after mowing the lawn. I took another sip of tea. It had cooled. Inside I heard Megan laugh, loud, performative, hollow. Then I heard the sliding glass door open behind me. It was Greg, my son-in-law. He lit a cigarette, even though Megan hated the smell. She's got the paperwork ready, he said, not realizing I could hear him from the porch. Once the title clears, we can list it before September. If her mother dies this year, we'll avoid the capital gains. I didn't move. I just stood there, eyes on the garden I once planted with Emma, my granddaughter. Only the rosemary had survived. She'll sign, Greg continued. She's too far gone to know what she's doing. Megan murmured something I couldn't hear. Then laughter again. They thought I was deaf, or daft, or both. But I remembered every word. I was not always a burden. Once I was Mama. Once Megan held my hand at her father's funeral and said, You'll never be alone. I'll take care of you, always. We stood together under the mossy oak trees that day, his casket lowered into soft Louisiana soil. She wept into my shoulder like she was still my little girl, and I believed her. For a while she kept her word. She moved me into the master bedroom. She painted the walls a soft sage, bought me new curtains, even placed a framed photo of Tom on the nightstand. She made tea for me every evening after work. She let me sit by the kitchen island while she cooked, asking about my day even if she barely listened. Then, things began to change. It started subtly, missed greetings when she came home, fewer shared meals. She began staying later at the bank. I chalked it up to stress. But stress, I've learned, is just the costume people put on when they no longer want to love you out loud. One morning I came back from a doctor's appointment and found my things piled in the hallway. The guest room is more practical, Megan had said, not meeting my eyes. We're turning the master into a home office. Greg needs space to work remotely. The guest room was smaller, colder, the window barely opened, but I said nothing. I folded my sweaters. I made the bed. A few months later, Greg's brother came to visit, just for a weekend. That weekend turned into a month. Then I was moved to the sofa in the living room. "You watch TV anyway," Megan said with a wave of her hand. "It's easier for everyone." The sofa was stiff and sagged in the middle. At night, I curled into myself like a question mark, listening to the murmur of late-night news and the hum of a refrigerator that never quite shut properly. Emma would tiptoe out sometimes to bring me a blanket. She never said a word, just tucked it gently around my knees and kissed my forehead before retreating to her room. But kindness from a child only made the absence of it from her mother louder. Eventually, even the sofa became too visible. "It's awkward," Megan said. "When clients drop by and see an old woman asleep in the middle of the house, it sends the wrong message." She laughed like it was funny. Greg did not laugh. He just carried my things to the laundry room. My new space was between the washer and the dryer. There was a twin mattress on the floor, a bare bulb overhead, and the smell of detergent in the walls. I did not cry. I did not ask for more. I just listened. I listened as Megan changed the locks to the drawer where Tom's documents were kept. I listened as Greg muttered about consolidating assets and liquidating equity. And one day, I noticed the key to the safe was gone. "It's safer this way," Megan said when I asked. "You get confused sometimes." I did not argue. I let her think I was confused. I let her think I was fading. They underestimated how clearly a woman remembers the shape of betrayal. The final blow came on a Tuesday. I had asked to see the savings book, not to withdraw anything, just to see it. Megan scoffed. "Mama," she said, her tone dripping with condescension, "you do not understand how property value works. You grew up thinking houses were homes, but they're assets now, tools." I stared at her. She smiled. "This house, this land, it has potential. You're taking up equity." I opened my mouth. She cut me off. "Honestly, you should be thankful we're letting you stay here rent-free." Rent-free in the house my husband built, in the home where I raised her, in the place where I had once walked barefoot to hang her baby clothes in the sun. That night I sat alone on the laundry room mattress. I opened the bottom drawer of my old suitcase and pulled out the envelope I had hidden for years. It held the original deed, and something better. Tom's handwritten note taped to the back of a page, dated 20 years ago. "If they ever try to force your hand," he wrote, "show them this. You were never meant to be anyone's burden." I read it 3 times, then I folded it carefully and began to plan. The day I realized my house was no longer mine in their eyes began with the sound of a paper shredder. I had gone to place a folded towel in the linen closet near the study when I heard the buzz. Not the usual hum of the printer or the beeping of the microwave, but that sharp mechanical whirring that only means one thing. Something was being destroyed. I peeked through the cracked door. Greg stood by the shredder, feeding it document after document. Megan sat at her desk, flipping through a thick manila folder. She looked up and said, "Save the originals. We only need 1 notarized copy for the title transfer." But Sherman, the title document read, "Title transfer." The phrase hit me like a slap. Later that night, after they left for a dinner party, I returned to that study. They had locked the drawer, but not well. I'd been a mother, a housekeeper, a widow, and before all of that, a curious child who knew how to slide hairpins into keyholes. Inside I found it. A contract labeled durable power of attorney, full financial control. My name was on it, so was Megan's. The last page had a signature line left blank, waiting for me. I stared at the document, the language printed in cold legal ink, authority to act on behalf of property owner in all matters of real estate, banking, and asset liquidation. My hands trembled, but not from age, from rage. I made a copy using their own printer. I folded the copy into my knitting bag right between the needles and the old crochet scarf I never finished. The next morning, I called someone I hadn't spoken to in over a decade, David Klein, a bankruptcy attorney, and once upon a time, my friend's ex-husband. When his business went under in the early 2000s, I had helped him get through it, loaned him a small sum, baked bread for his daughter while he pieced his life back together. He never forgot that. "Mrs. Miller," he said, surprised. "Are you okay?" "No," I answered plainly, "but I think I know how to fix it." We met in secret at a diner across town, the kind with sticky menus and weak coffee. I handed him the copy of the contract, and I watched his eyes narrow as he read. "Have you signed anything?" he asked. "No, and I will not." "Then you still have power," he said. "And if what you're telling me is true, we have more than power, we have leverage." He asked if I still had Tom's original will. I told him yes, but I had not read it in years. That night I pulled it from my suitcase. It was sealed in the same envelope Tom had placed it in before he died, along with the deed to the house, dated and notarized in both our names. But what I had forgotten, what I had never truly understood until that moment, was the second page, typed in smaller print, a clause added by Tom at the last minute. It read, "In the event that the surviving spouse is compelled or coerced to vacate or transfer ownership of the primary residence during her lifetime, said transfer shall be considered null and void. All rights shall revert to a third-party charitable trust designated by the surviving spouse." I sat back in my chair. Tom had seen it coming. Not this exact betrayal, perhaps, but something like it. A warning that love can rot, that entitlement grows best in silence. I photocopied the will and sent a copy to David. He called me the next day. "This clause," he said, "is your shield, and if they push this any further, it will become their sword." I didn't cry, I didn't laugh. I just sat alone in the laundry room that night and whispered to myself, "You were never meant to be anyone's burden." And now, thanks to Tom, I had proof. The night it all changed, the house sparkled. Candles lined the hallway. Wine glasses gleamed beneath soft chandeliers. The table was set with gold-rimmed plates and embroidered napkins folded into swans. I heard laughter I did not recognize. Bank laughter, business laughter, hollow, loud. Megan was hosting her quarterly team dinner. A networking event, she called it. A chance to solidify my VP candidacy, she said, as if that title would change the way she spoke to me behind closed doors. I had been told to stay in my room. "Just for the evening," Megan had said. "It's a professional environment. People from corporate will be here." So I did. I stayed tucked in the laundry room like a coat hung for later use, but my throat was dry, and the heat from the kitchen had crept down the hall. I thought I could quietly fill a glass of water, maybe catch a breeze from the open back door. I stepped softly into the kitchen, and everything stopped. Megan stood near the island pouring wine into crystal. The moment she saw me, my house dress, my orthopedic slippers, the glass in my hand, her eyes burned. "Mama," she hissed through a smile, walking toward me. "What are you doing?" "I was just getting water," I said gently. She reached past me, grabbed the glass, and dropped it into the sink. The noise startled the nearest guests, who turned slightly, unsure if they should be watching. "Mama," she said again, louder now, "I asked you to stay in your room." I nodded. "I know, baby. I was just—" "Do you want people to think we run a care home?" she snapped. "You walk through here and it's like the air shifts. I have colleagues here, for God's sake." I stepped back. My heel caught the edge of the floor mat, and I dropped the second glass I had just reached for. It shattered, the sound sharp and final. Gasps. Megan turned to the guests, forced a laugh. "Sorry, Mama's had a long day." Then she turned back to me, her voice low and vicious. "If you had any sense left, you'd leave. Leave the house, leave the keys, and go live where you belong." I looked at her, stunned. She leaned closer. "Leave the house, Mama. If you care about what's left of your dignity, you'll sign it over and disappear. You don't belong here anymore." The room was quiet. No one stopped her. No one defended me. I nodded, slowly, and backed away from the kitchen. I walked down the hall, past the candlelight, the laughter that had resumed, and into the silence of the laundry room. I sat on the mattress, folded my hands in my lap, and listened to the celebration overhead. Then I picked up the phone. I called David. "I'm ready," I said. "I'll meet you tomorrow morning," he replied. I hung up. That night I slept without dreaming, because I no longer needed dreams. I had a plan. They thought silence meant surrender, that when I nodded and smiled, I had accepted their world, the one where old women were ornamental, voiceless, easy to outmaneuver. But I had not survived 80 years, buried a husband, raised a daughter, and stitched together a life just to be erased quietly. After the party, I moved quickly. David and I met again, this time in his office, surrounded by shelves of heavy books and windows that overlook the courthouse. I want to activate the clause, I told him, the one Tom left. He nodded, already a step ahead. We'll need a certified copy, a sworn affidavit from you. And Patience, she's going to think she's won. They intend to let her. We filed everything that day. Quietly. Legally. The clause Tom had added, the one designed to protect me from exactly this moment, was now officially in effect. It stated clearly, any attempt to coerce the surviving spouse to transfer, vacate, or otherwise relinquish the primary residence shall result in immediate forfeiture of said assets to a third-party charitable organization, named at the sole discretion of the surviving spouse. The ink was barely dry when Megan made her move. She brought me a new contract a week later. "Mama," she said, her voice dipped in false sugar, "we found a way to help you downsize without any stress. It's just a signature. Then we can get the paperwork filed and free up some cash for your comfort." I blinked at her, let my hands tremble just enough. "Oh," I said, "is this the form?" She smiled, almost relieved. "Yes, Mama, it's for the best. You've done so much. Let us take care of everything now." "I'm tired," I whispered, "so tired of making decisions." "That's why I'm here." I signed it. Right there in front of her, with my hand shaking and a grateful smile on my face. "Thank you," she said, kissing my cheek, like I was already gone. Within 48 hours, she had submitted the paperwork. Within 72 hours, she had listed the property as an asset in her new personal trust. She never asked why I didn't resist. She never wondered what had changed. That was her mistake. Because the moment she filed that transfer, under false pretenses, under coercion, without disclosure of the clause, she forfeited everything. David sent the documents to Maison du Silence, a non-profit legal aid and housing network I had selected weeks earlier. Their mission: protect the elderly from exploitation. Their specialty: holding predators accountable in the only language they understand: law. A letter was sent from Maison du Silence to Megan's bank, to the city clerk, and to Megan herself. It stated, due to the activation of a protective estate clause from the original will of Thomas Miller, and pursuant to elder law protections regarding coercive asset transfer, the recent change of title is invalid. As of today, the property is transferred under full ownership of Maison du Silence, as designated by the surviving spouse. I waited until the mail arrived. Megan's scream echoed through the house. She stormed into the laundry room, waving the letter like a flag of war. "What is this? What the hell did you do?" I looked up slowly from my knitting. "I did exactly what you told me," I said. "I left the house." She blinked, confused. "You said if I had any sense I'd give up the house and disappear, so I did, just not in the way you expected. You gave it to a charity," she shouted. "Are you insane?" "No, I'm protected, and now so is the house." She stared at me, stunned. "This was my future." "No," I said, "it was mine. You were just living in it." The letter arrived on a Monday, a cream envelope, thick with formality, bearing the golden seal of the Louisiana Office of Elder Rights. Megan ripped it open at the breakfast table, still in her robe, hair wrapped in a towel. I sat across from her, sipping my tea. She read the first line, then the second. Her face paled. "This is a mistake," she muttered. Greg looked up from his phone. "What is it?" She held it up like it was burning her fingers. "It says the house is no longer ours," she whispered. "It says the title transfer has been voided under elder protection law." Greg frowned. "What do you mean, voided?" I put my teacup down gently. "It means," I said softly, "that the moment you coerced me to sign that document, you lost everything." Megan turned to me, stunned. "You? You did this?" "I activated a clause your father put in place. It protects me, and others like me." She shook her head. "But you signed it? I have the contract." "And I have the original will," I said. "Filed, certified, and reviewed by an attorney before you ever handed me that pen." Greg grabbed the letter. His eyes darted across the text. "Transfer of deed nullified, ownership reassigned, donation to Maison du Silence." He slammed it down. "This can't be legal." But it was. 2 days later, a journalist from the local paper called, then another from Baton Rouge. Then the evening news ran a headline: "Bank exec accused of coercing elderly mother into signing over home. Asset returned to nonprofit." Megan was asked to step down. pending investigation. By the end of the week, she was gone from the bank. Her office emptied, her email shut down, her photo was removed from the leadership page online, and the house? It was no longer quiet. Volunteers came, painters, electricians, counselors. They transformed the place, my home, into something greater. A shelter and legal aid center for elderly women pushed out of their own families. They kept the kitchen as it was. They let me stay in the sunroom. But they replaced Megan's crystal with ceramic mugs, and on the gate they installed a bronze plaque that read, "This was once the home of a woman called a burden. Now it is a place where burdens are lifted." Megan never returned, and I did not miss her. She came one rainy afternoon, storming through the front doors of Maison du Silence like she still had a right to them. Megan wore black heels, a trench coat too expensive for the weather, and a face twisted with something between disbelief and fury. I was sitting in the sunroom, folding linens with one of the volunteers, when I heard her voice echo down the hall. "I want to speak to my mother," a staff member gently told her. "She's in a session." "She's not in a damn session, she's hiding," Megan snapped. I stood and walked to the hallway, as calm as the tea I'd just finished steeping. "I'm here," I said. Megan turned, eyes burning. She looked thinner, paler, like someone who had been living on caffeine and rage for a week. Her voice trembled when she spoke, not with sadness, but with something much colder. "You ruined me." I didn't flinch. "You humiliated me. In front of my colleagues, my bank, the media, over a house?" I said nothing. She took a step closer. "You did this to me, over a party, a moment, one stupid comment. You let strangers take everything from me." Still, I said nothing. Then she spat the words like venom. "You're a bitter, vengeful old woman. You didn't just live long, you lived just long enough to make sure I suffered." She expected an outburst, a slap, a cry. But all I did was reach into the pocket of my cardigan and pull out a folded envelope. I handed it to her. She snatched it with shaking hands. It was a letter I'd written the night after the title transfer was voided. No threats, no bitterness, just the truth. She opened it and began to read. Her lips moved slowly. "You never needed me, and I accepted that long ago. But there are people in this world who do need someone like me. Someone who knows what it means to be called invisible, burdensome, replaceable. You saw this house as equity. I saw it as a refuge. So I gave it to those who know its worth. Not in dollars, in dignity. You did not lose this house, you lost the right to call it yours. Because you forgot who built it, who kept it warm, who made space for you when you had nothing. I did not ruin you, Megan. I freed myself." She folded the letter, slower this time. "You think this makes you noble?" she asked, voice cracking. "You think you're some kind of saint now?" "No," I said. "Then what are you?" I looked at her with eyes that no longer wept for her approval. "I am the woman you underestimated." Megan stared at me like she was trying to remember something. Maybe who I used to be when she still loved me, or at least pretended to. Then she whispered, almost pleading, "Wasn't I enough?" I tilted my head gently. "You were my daughter. That was always enough, until I stopped being yours." She swallowed hard, turned, and left without another word. The rain followed her. I returned to the sunroom, picked up the linens, and folded the next one in silence, because I had already said everything that needed to be said. The house looks different now. The wallpaper is new, the lights warmer. The furniture, simple, soft, welcoming, was chosen not for aesthetics, but for comfort. The scent of antiseptic is gone, replaced by fresh bread and lavender. Even the floors seem to breathe easier. But the bones of the house are still mine. I know every creak, every draft that slips through the east windows in winter. I know where Tom used to keep the toolbox. I know the tile in the back bathroom that still clicks when you step just right. What they built here isn't just a shelter, it's the beginning. Maison du Silence, the name carved into the new mailbox out front, has become a haven for women like me. Women who were once silenced, sidelined, dismissed. Women who gave everything and were left with nothing. Now they have rooms with clean linens, warm meals, and people who listen when they speak. And on the black wrought iron gate that wraps around the garden, mounted proudly in polished brass, is a plaque that reads, This was once the home of a woman called a burden. Now it is a place where those like her begin again. Sometimes I stand behind the curtains of my little room on the top floor, what used to be the attic, now repainted and full of sun. From here, I can see the garden where the roses are coming back. I can hear the laughter of women rediscovering joy. Emma visits when she can. She's older now, wiser. Her hugs are tighter. One afternoon, I was sitting in the garden when a girl, no more than 20, stopped near my chair. She wore a volunteer badge and carried a basket of folded towels. She looked at me with wide, curious eyes. "Ma'am," she asked, "were you one of the ones who got left behind?" I smiled. "What makes you ask?" She hesitated. "People say this house was yours, that your daughter, you know, abandoned you." I set down my tea. "No," I said softly. "She did not leave me. She just stopped seeing me. That's not the same thing." The girl frowned. "I don't get it." "I was not kicked out," I told her. "I was erased, bit by bit, like a painting scrubbed clean until no one remembered what the image once was. And now?" I smiled again. "Now I am not invisible. Now I am home." She nodded slowly, then carried the towels inside. Later that night I wrote a letter. I do not know if Megan will ever read it. I do not know if she still lives in the city. But I wrote it anyway, because some endings deserve to be written by the one who lived them. My dear Megan, you were once my greatest joy, and then you became my greatest silence. But even that taught me something. Silence is never empty. It's just waiting for the right voice to fill it. I did not give this house away to punish you. I gave it away to protect others like me, women who do not have the luxury of lawyers or surviving spouses who saw the danger before it came. I had a voice. I used it. That is not vengeance, that is grace. I wish you peace, not because you deserve it, but because I deserve to wish it. And if you ever wonder who I am now, just look at the plaque on the gate. I am the woman they called a burden, and I am still standing. Mama, I folded the letter, placed it in a drawer beside my window, and closed it. Outside, the garden glowed under moonlight, no longer a battlefield, just a beginning. I thought my story had already ended. I thought the last chapter had been written when the house changed hands, when Megan walked away, when the plaque went up on the gate, and I stood behind it, proud and alone. But sometimes life places bookmarks where you expect final periods. His name was Walter. He came to Maison du Silence not as a resident, but as a visitor. A retired carpenter from Lafayette, he volunteered once a week to repair shelves, mend window panes, and install ramps that the younger staff never measured quite right. He wore suspenders, smelled faintly of cedar, and whistled old jazz songs under his breath as he worked. The first time he saw me, I was sitting under the pecan tree with my knitting. He tipped his cap and said, "Ma'am, you're in the best shade spot in the county." I said, "That's why I claimed it first." He chuckled. "Remind me to negotiate with you next time before I bring my lunch." Over time, we talked more. About nothing at first. Weather, books, whether the squirrels had declared war on the tomato plants. Then about more, his late wife, my Tom. The ache that lives in your bones when you've been quiet too long. He never pried, he never pitied, he just listened. One day, he brought 2 mugs of chicory coffee and sat beside me on the bench without asking. He handed me one. "I don't mean to presume," he said, "but I think we've both had our fill of being alone." I looked at him, at his steady hands, the deep lines in his face that spoke of things lost and survived, and I said, "I think presuming is underrated." So we began, slowly, carefully. He built me a small writing desk by hand and installed it under the attic window, where the sunlight touched just right. I taught him how to make sweet potato pie from scratch. We read aloud to each other, Faulkner mostly, and Maya Angelou when the day needed healing. One spring morning, he asked me to dance. There was no music, just birdsong and the rustle of wind through the camellias. But he held me close, his hand gentle against the small of my back, and we moved like 2 people who finally understood how to step in time. "You know," he whispered, "there's more world out there, still waiting." I nodded. I just never thought I'd see it again. "Then let's go see it together." We did. We started with the small things. A weekend in Natchez where we walked the riverbank and held hands like teenagers. Then Charleston, where he bought me a scarf that matched my eyes, and I told him he was being ridiculous, and secretly never took it off. By the end of that year, we had a map with pins in 12 states. We rode trains, slow and scenic. We stayed in bed and breakfasts run by widows, with stories even longer than mine. We drank coffee in Texas diners and tea in Vermont inns. We sent postcards back to Maison du Silence, addressed not to staff, but to the women who once believed their lives had shrunk too small to move. We told them, "You're not done." We told them, "There's joy left." We told them, "It's never too late to be seen." Eventually, we stood together at the edge of the Grand Canyon. The wind was cold, the sky huge. Walter reached for my hand. "We could stop here," he said, "or we could keep going." I squeezed his fingers. "We keep going. We always keep going." Back at Maison du Silence, our room still waits for us. The attic window still glows in the morning, but these days we live mostly in motion, two souls who refuse to fade, two hearts that learned that silence can remember pain, but also it can choose joy. And joy, once chosen, doesn't ask your age. It simply opens the door. We never expected to settle anywhere again. But joy, much like love, does not always ask for permanence, it only asks for presence. Still, one spring evening in Savannah, as we sat beneath an oak tree laced in Spanish moss, Walter looked over at me and said, "Do you think they miss us back home?" I smiled. "I think they remember us. That's enough." But something stirred in me. Something not quite longing, not quite closure, just a tug, a whisper of roots reaching back through the soil. The kind of feeling only a place that once tried to erase you can give when you finally return on your own terms. So we came back, not to reclaim the past, but to honor what grew from it. Maison du Silence welcomed us like we had never left. Women hugged us in the hallways, slipped notes into our coat pockets, whispered, "You gave me courage." Walter rebuilt the front steps. I started a writing circle on Tuesdays. We called it The Second Voice. We wrote letters we never sent. Letters to mothers, to daughters, to younger selves. One woman, soft-spoken and nearly 90, wrote, "They said I was too forgetful to be useful, but I remember every name of the children I raised. That's not memory loss. That's love prioritizing." Another, barely 60, wrote, "I was married 35 years, and still no one ever heard me sing. Now I hum every morning when I make coffee." Sometimes we read them aloud, sometimes we just folded them into envelopes and left them in the old cedar box we kept on the fireplace mantel. The box was engraved with one phrase: "Truth is not volume, it's endurance." One autumn day I sat in the garden, watching two new residents plant lavender near the gate. A young social worker, fresh out of college, full of eager kindness, sat beside me and asked, "What do you hope this place becomes in 10 years?" I looked out over the yard. "At peace," I said. "Not busy, not bigger. No, just at peace. A place where no woman's silence is mistaken for surrender ever again." She nodded, and for a long while we just watched the leaves turn. Walter brought out 2 cups of tea, one for each of us. He kissed the top of my head. I leaned into him. Our lives are not grand now, not loud, but they are full. We still dance in the kitchen. We still trace maps on the back of postcards. We still sit in the sun and speak without needing to explain why we are smiling, because we are seen, and because the door that once closed on me now stays open for others. This house, once a battleground, is now a lighthouse, and every story we tell inside it lights the way. Thank you for listening. If you stayed until the end of this story, then maybe, just maybe, you understand what it means to be called invisible, and still choose to stand tall, to be silenced, and still choose to speak, to be discarded, and still build something no one can ever take away from you. This was not just a story about betrayal, it was about rebirth, about dignity reclaimed in silence and power found in knowing exactly who you are, even when the world insists you are nothing more than a burden. Because on Grandma True Stories, we do not tell tales of pity. We tell stories of women who remember, who endured, who were underestimated and used that underestimation as a weapon. Women who do not raise their voices because they never needed to. All they had to do was wait for the world to hear what they already knew. So, If this story made you feel something, if you've ever been told to sit down, to shut up, to get out of the way, if you've ever watched someone try to erase your worth with a whisper or a signature, then this is your place. Subscribe to Grandma True Stories for more real, emotional, unforgettable stories told from the front porch of quiet lives. Stories of betrayal, of quiet revenge, of mothers who were never weak, just patient. Click that subscribe button, turn on notifications, share these stories with someone who needs to know. Revenge has no expiration date, and the quietest women in the room often hold the sharpest truth. We'll be right here, waiting, watching, remembering, and when we speak, you'll never forget it.